Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mariana Dalto, and our guest today is Purdeep Sangha. He wrote a book called The Complete Man, and he's the host, he's the host of the TV show called Mind Your Own Business. And he's also an entrepreneur, speaker, and podcaster. Welcome, Purdeep, to the show.
Hey, Mariana, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. I'm excited about all the information you're going to share with us today. He has a lot to share. So you listeners, pay attention because he has a lot of content to help you grow your business. So let's start first to talk about the book that you wrote and what inspired you to write The Complete Man.
Yeah, wow. So that there's a long story behind that, but I was inspired to write that book because of my experience throughout life. That's the first one. And the challenges that I've seen men face, particularly nowadays with society and masculinity and what's been happening with that. And the challenges between men and women, and how we've been kind of played against each other over the last decade, and what that does to family units. But I did it because, in all honesty, fundamentally, I saw a lot of people struggling. I saw a lot of men struggling, saw men struggling in their relationships and families being impacted. I grew up with a great dad who struggled with alcoholism. And as long as I could remember, I used to see him sober and be a great dad, and nothing could hurt our family when my dad was sober. But when my dad drank too much, it was like he was the cause of a lot of our pain. So I saw that until eventually the alcohol accelerated his diabetes, and then he had heart disease, and then he passed away in 2018. And the passing, it's things are meant to happen, and he passed the way he was meant to pass. And there was no other way around that. But that was a great lesson for me because I had built the skills, the knowledge, the tools, the research to really help men perform better in all areas of their life. So show up better as business leaders, show up better as husbands, as fathers, have stronger families, and just be happier as themselves. So that's why I wrote the book, so that I can just give men a little bit of insight, knowledge from my own personal experience and research and some of the science as to how they could do things better.
Yeah, makes sense. It's there's a lot about mindset, right? Like so many things personally can impact how you manage your life and your own business, and sometimes taking care of that stuff or thinking differently or reading a book or listening from you or the podcast can help a little bit understand how you can handle life differently from your own point of view and perspective, right?
Yes, absolutely. Exactly.
And then I think you wanted to share for the people to, maybe read the book, you wanted to share, there's a promo code or something that you wanted to share to the audience if they want to buy it.
Yeah, if they want to get the copy, they can go to completemanbook.com, or if you want the digital audio and ebook, we have a promo code which is victory75, and it's just one word, victory, and then the number 75, and they can go to completemanaudio.com.
Cool. Well, I'll put that in the show notes for the audience, but just wanted to make sure that they knew that you were offering that resource for people if they're interested to listen or read the book. So let's talk about your journey and how you became a strategic advisor and a business leader.
Oh yeah, so I think teaching is a big part of my life. As long as I could remember, I was an academic tutor. I was a personal trainer at 17. Throughout my executive career, I was always teaching other people things. So my can say, where does my soul lie? Where does my skill lie? A big part of that is in teaching other people and advising other people. So it's part of my lineage. My great grandfather was a spiritual teacher in India for 60 plus years. And so I think that was part of my family and my background. So that's where it really started. And when I realized that you can say one of my skill sets is learning, experimenting, testing, and developing strategies and systems. And so seeing what works and what doesn't work. And I've been doing that for years. When I was a kid, I used to take things apart, like remote control cars, and rebuild them and do things like that. And so I've been doing that in business. I've been doing that with human performance for the longest time. So that skill has just accelerated and grown to a point now where, when I was in the executive world, at some point in time, I just realized that I had far outgrown it. It wasn't a challenge for me anymore. And I wanted to leave and start my own firm. And that's what I did. And that's when I started to work with entrepreneurs, business owners. But then it soon morphed. It really accelerated quite fast because of my knowledge and background in neuroscience and performance psychology, that I started to help them on the human performance side. So we kind of combined the two and really became a single place for business professionals, executives, entrepreneurs to come and say, hey, look, I want to grow my business or career, but I also want to do it in a way where I don't screw up my life. I want to have more time, not less time. I want to have more energy, not less energy. I want to be less stressed, not more stressed, right? I want to spend more time with my kids and my family, not less time. So how do I do that? How do I reach my biggest goals and ambitions without essentially screwing up my life?
Yeah, so you basically help them on a personal level and then on the business level, because at the end of the day, it goes along, it goes together, right? You can't just think about, getting coaching on one area and not the other in order to succeed in life, right? So you kind of like need to look at both
Yeah.
in parallel.
Yeah, and you could I'm sure you can understand this because a lot of times, and I realized this when I was 17 years old, because I was so adamant about helping people get fit when I became a personal trainer. So I would help them, I would build out a plan for them, I would build out a nutrition plan, and 80% of the people wouldn't do it. So then I started to really dive deep into psychology and performance psychology to understand why people did certain things or do certain things and why people don't. Because now, just like as a business owner, for example, you're working with a business owner, you can give them a strategy. That doesn't mean they're going to execute on it. And that doesn't mean they're going to execute on it well. So all of that can go to complete waste if the execution isn't done properly. And that's where I focus really into, because execution is all about humans. It's all about people. It's all about mindset. It's all about psychology. It's all about the emotional mastery aspects. It's all about their belief systems. There's a whole, you can say, um, ecosystem in terms of how we operate as human beings, and not just mindset. It's what are our habits? Do we have systems as operating systems as a person when I show up? Are my habits and routines and systems effective and productive? A lot of people don't have effective and productive systems for themselves in terms of how they operate. So by showing them how to perform better themselves, how to make better decisions. And because we have the science behind that, we partnered with close to 20, I think it was 20 different research institutions and academic institutions in Canada, US, overseas. And we had over 4,000 participants come through our studies. And we did a lot of research around how do business professionals have more creativity, motivation, drive, learn faster, right? So we've incorporated a lot of that science and research into the work that we do. So now someone is showing up, a business professional showing up with more energy, more drive, more creativity, and and being able to make better decisions. So now they can execute on the strategy that we give them on the business side, right?
Yeah,
And
and that's
so
the part like that people struggle sometimes because they understand the theory, the strategy, but when they need to start executing, sometimes they get paralyzed by, oh, I don't know how, and then that's where action doesn't happen. And if it doesn't happen, then they get stuck. And then you need to go back again to kind of understand what's stopping you for moving forward, right? And
yeah.
sometimes that could be part of having a coach and an accountability person who can help you like keep moving forward, understanding the roadblocks.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, at the beginning, I was a little bit frustrated because people sometimes would hire me to help them be more accountable. And that was the biggest struggle for me because I'm like, no, self-integrity is one of the key. When I take a look at the core characteristics of individuals who are extremely successful, right? We've identified key ones. Self-integrity is one of the top ones in discipline, right? Those are top two ones. And if a person doesn't have self-integrity and discipline, it's tough to coach them, right? Now you are just becoming a babysitter and person trying to hold them accountable. And that is, as an advisor, that is one of the toughest spots to be in. And I don't like to get paid to be a babysitter. I like to get paid to
I
get
agree.
people to move forward. So, but there are ways that we can teach people how to have more self-integrity, how to teach people to have more discipline. So a lot of times, people would say, "Hey, look, I need someone to help me be more accountable." And I would say, "Okay, let's break that down. Is it really accountability, or is it discipline, self-integrity, or is there some habits or routines that need to be changed or modified?" So what I realized was even within accountability, there's a number of different layers that people need help with. And so that's where, it's interesting to really deep dive into the mind of a human being and the systems behind it, to see what's actually happening. And this is where I'm really proud of the work that we did because layered it. We've layered it down. You should see some of our maps that we have through our research. We've really layered down individual hundreds of levels of a human's performance. And now we can identify through a system to say, okay, this is what they're struggling with. Let's tackle that. Or this is what they're really good at. Let's help them amplify that. So we've broken it down into a science, so it's not so mystical anymore when it comes to how humans perform and behave.
So how do you get to that? Do you do a self-assessment? You provide a self-assessment for them to understand where maybe they have some gaps in order to move forward and be accountable on what they have to get done?
Yeah, self-assessment is one area. I think self-assessments are great, but they don't tell the whole story because
Mm-hmm.
that's how people perceive things, and a lot of times how perception and behavior are a little bit different. So it does take some time to actually, when working with individuals, if we're doing it one-on-one or through a group session, we are able to find out where people are struggling. And that's the key because it does take time. Anybody that goes through an assessment and says this is what you need to work on and this is, you know, that's a tough one because you're getting the surface level stuff, right? We need to go deeper to understand that. Sometimes that can take a few weeks, sometimes it can take a few months. Sometimes I've seen with people it can even take up to a year. And then all of a sudden it clicks. It's like, okay, now we understand what the biggest challenges are because a lot of people will portray something, even to themselves, even fool themselves in a particular way, right? And just because they don't want to feel guilty, they don't want to feel shame. No one wants to be completely open and vulnerable with themselves to say that they're not good enough in some area or that they've screwed up. It takes a very self-aware person to be able to do that. And so taking them through the process, and then all of a sudden, we do come up to a point where like, okay, all of this other stuff that we worked on over the last few months, it's great. We'll continue to work on it, but this is where we really need to focus. This is where we're going to get the real challenge or change, because these are what we call the roadblocks, right? Or it's kind of like the cap in a champagne bottle. You pull that cork out, that's when things start to flow. And sometimes it takes a while to find what that block is.
Okay, that's super interesting, and I'm sure every person has a different timeline for that, right? Maybe in 3 months they got it. Maybe it takes some people a year to figure out what are those roadblocks, because it might depend on how open they are talking to you and being even honest with themselves about what are their own struggles, right?
Yes, exactly.
So let's talk about what are the common obstacles that business owners face today and that ended up like coming to you to help with those obstacles. What are the typical problems that they have, and that's why they find you, that you can be the person who can help them?
I think a lot of business owners are struggling with personal fulfillment. That's probably the biggest one, and freedom. And what I mean by that is they've built a business, their lifestyle around the business, which is building things in reverse. So they have a business now, and it's making a ton of money, for example, and they don't have the level of freedom that they thought they would, or it's not making them as happy as they thought it would, and they're tied down to the business quite a bit. Maybe they've fallen short on the relationship, maybe it's their marriage, maybe it's with their kids, or they feel like something is missing. So that's one of the big things that I would say most business owners are struggling with is the freedom side and the fulfillment side. Because a lot of them, they've built this animal now. It's like, now how do they even get out of it? So a lot of people, that's why we have a specific business called Sell Wealthy, which is help business owners sell their business. We don't sell it for them, but we get them ready to a point where they can sell it if they want to, transition it to the next generation, sell it to their business partner, whatever they want to do, but we get their business ready to the point where they can actually do it. Because a lot of business owners aren't ready. They've built a business around themselves, not necessarily built a business around how someone else might take it over. So they've, and what they call the golden handcuffs, right? They are making great profit, but they don't know how to get out of the business now. It's tough for them to step out. Maybe someone may not want to buy it or buy it for the amount that the business owner thinks the business is worth. So that's one of the biggest challenges. And I would say the other one is time. A lot of business owners are trying to get more done. This is why one of our most popular workshops is how to get more work done in less time without burning out. Like that's our most popular workshop right now. It's because people do want to get more done. They want to perform better, but they don't want to sacrifice more. They don't want to sacrifice more time with their families. So that's the other challenge that we help because we can show people how to get the same amount of work done and probably be even, sometimes 200% more work done in less time. They can get the same amount of work done in half the time, for example. So because we know the strategies, we know the systems, we know how the mind works, right? So we just help them put those things into place so that they can actually build habits, routines, systems, automations to actually do things faster. And a lot of times what we find today is we're just such a distracted society. We have so much on our mind that people just aren't able to be present. And that is one of the biggest challenges right now. Focus, attention, being present is a challenge for a lot of business owners.
So from that workshop, what's the number one thing that people are like, oh my gosh, you're so right about this one. It's an aha moment, like, well, of course this makes sense, but they still didn't realize that that's something that they should be doing or whatever. Like, what's the one of the all the strategies that I'm sure you teach in that workshop that could come up of, oh, that's a good one to think about.
Yeah, I would say the number one thing is when we talk about this concept of work-life harmony versus balance and energy, because so I'm a scientist, right? That's my background. But even Einstein said everything in life is energy, and it's as simple as that. That's all it is. Physical form, it's just a form of energy. Um, so everything we do, say, touch, taste, smell, hear, everything is just a form of energy. So what does that mean? Energy is our most important resource. Hands down, it's the most important resource. And what is the one thing a lot of business owners are struggling with? It's energy because they're feeling wiped out by the amount of energy that they have to put into the business and they come out and they don't have that much energy. So a lot of people confuse it for time, but business owners, they have time. They have an hour, two, three, sometimes to spend with their family members, but they don't have the energy to enjoy it. They don't have the energy to be fully present. So when we show them how energy works in the system and how to bring that energy level up, now it's a completely different ballgame. So energy is fuel for creativity, for motivation, for decision making, for quality of relationships. Now things change completely. So when entrepreneurs go from thinking about time from time to energy, their life changes, right? Because now they're realizing how to use their energy more effectively. They're realizing now what gives them energy, what takes energy away, because a system has to have a net positive energy. And if the system is starting to get drained, this is where people burn out. This is where they feel less fulfilled, right? People that have more energy are happier, typically, right? They're better
Okay.
relationships. They're nicer to be around. They can get more done. So that's probably the biggest thing that comes out that people have this massive aha moment where they're like, wow, they're going to start to shift things and how they do things.
Very interesting. So, how does creativity play in some of the stuff that you probably, I don't know if you talk about creativity in that workshop, but sometimes having that break and being creative as part of your day to day can help release some of the tension and energy that you may have for other things. Do you use creativity as part of your strategies?
Yeah, creativity is not necessarily part of that workshop, but they have other elements. So I have a soft spot for creativity because it's what I really started to study at the very beginning. And I started to study that when I was around 12 years old. And I was studying inventors like Leonardo da Vinci and people like Einstein. And it was a passion of mine. In fact, I have my designation from MIT and Stanford for a certified innovation executive. I have my MBA in innovation specifically. So creativity is very near and dear to my heart. And it's creativity is not only just an organizational element, it's a personal element, meaning individuals, some are more creative than others. And creativity itself is a system. Energy fuels creativity. That's one of the key aspects, right? That we have to have enough energy to be able to be creative. That's why a lot of business owners, when they get to a point where they don't have energy, they don't have the same level of creativity. So there's a tie there. But there's an art and there's a science behind creativity in itself. And it's very powerful depending on your role, right? So if you are an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner that needs to be creative, and it's part of your role, then it's an asset. But you may not be a business owner that needs to be creative. That's why you have other people on your team to be creative. So it really depends on the structure of your business and do you need to be creative. But I think every single person needs to have a certain amount of creativity for one particular reason, and that's to get through challenges. So creativity comes in two forms. It's the ability to overcome problems and challenges. That's one area, which we can call ingenuity. And then there's the ability to create new opportunities or find new opportunities. So creativity can be split into those two things. So does a person need to be good at finding new opportunities and creating new opportunities? Yeah, to a certain degree. Typically entrepreneurs are good at that. That's why they're entrepreneurs. But do they need to be good at solving problems? Yes. And overcoming challenges? Absolutely. So that's where creativity is really, really important. And this is where a lot of business owners struggle because when their energy level drops or they have problems in their life and certain things happen, is that when they don't meet the threshold to be able to come up and be creative enough to solve problems or challenges, they're now becoming deficient.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happens when people, again, people get burnt out. They're not passionate about the things that they do. They're overwhelmed. They feel like they're stuck. And now they're just, they don't have the basic creativity to overcome problems and challenges, let alone now find new opportunities, right? So there's two different stages. And a great entrepreneur is good at both, but you don't have to be good at both.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good to know. And then now let's shift a little bit because we're almost at the end of the show. I really want to talk about your TV show and learn more about your podcast and the audience to learn about what do you offer and what are the themes for the TV show and the podcast?
Yeah, the TV show is really interesting one. It's not my TV show, but I hosted it and we launched it, part of the core launch group. But it's called Mind Your Own Business. It's actually a Canadian TV show for entrepreneurs with disabilities. That's what we highlight. So it's fabulous. It's the most inspiring thing that I think I've ever done because being a business owner in itself is a challenge. Like how many challenges do we have on a day-to-day basis? Running a business, but being healthy while we're doing it and not having a lifelong impairment or, for example, we're not blind, we can hear, we can walk for many of us, but these individuals are in wheelchairs and blind or they have MS, multiple sclerosis, or they have some other life-altering changes that are stopping them or challenging them to a completely new level. So for me, they are absolutely inspiring, right? I would encourage every person to watch the show because these people are pretty amazing. So that's a TV show there. Super proud of it. But it's also great because it raises awareness for people with accessibility challenges. I had no clue how much the degree of challenges and the number of challenges these individuals have. Just simply, for example, someone who is deaf can't access 99% of the training material out there because it's all built for people who are, you go to a workshop, people are talking. So if you're deaf, how are you supposed to go to a conference or a workshop? So the things that we take for granted as healthy human beings, um, there's so many people out there that are struggling. So for me, that's a passion project. And then my podcasts, I have two different ones. One is called the CEO Anonymous, where we answer questions that CEOs ask and have, or sometimes they're afraid to ask. And so we do.
I love that one. That's super cool. If you don't wanna, if you're
Yeah,
really curious about how you can get help, and that's probably one of my favorite ones.
yeah, it's a fun one I like to do. We're gonna actually start doing more episodes because it's actually grown. It was kind of like a side project. It's grown, and so we're gonna have to do more episodes now because we're being asked many questions. And then the other podcast is called the Complete Man Podcast, and that's again, it comes to the book. It's the podcast that I do to help people be more successful, particularly men, to be more successful in their lives. How do they show up as a better husband, better business leader? How do they have just, better fulfillment in life? And how do we make this a better society? Because we're struggling here, particularly in the U.S. right now. Over 55% of children are being raised without full-time fathers.
Mm.
Like it's an epidemic. So we need as much help as we can get. And then I'm excited because on our new platform that we're launching on Substack, we're going to have private podcasts on there That's going to be for the general public, which is going to be, how do you just perform better in everyday life? So that's going to be coming out soon as well.
That's awesome. So tell the audience the different workshops and programs you have, and they can leverage, and also how they can learn more about you, where to find you, and everything.
Sure, I'll start with where to find me. I'm most active on LinkedIn. That's the predominant platform that I'm on. So you can connect with me there. And website, purdeepsangha.com. We also have theexeclab.com as well. That's our high performance company. And then we have sellwealthy.com, which is helping business owners grow, scale, and exit their business. And then we have a number of other companies, but those are the ones that I put most of my focus and time in right now. And just in terms of the stuff that we do, my passion is teaching and advising. That's where I do a lot of workshops myself. I do a lot of keynotes myself. I do a lot of advising myself. So that's what I do day in and day out. I work with CEOs. And I'm actually starting to focus, Mariana, now on the VP level. And this is really interesting because I realized that at the VP level, no one is really coaching and advising them and how to be a great VP. And that's something in my corporate days when I was an executive at the VP level. I wish someone was there that had my skill set to be able to do it, because I think if we're a business owner, so this is, sorry, a little bit of a rabbit hole, but I've spent a lot of time over the last 7 years coaching, advising CEOs. And now I'm spending more time on their VP level because what I'm realizing is the CEOs don't have the skill set to coach their own VPs. And so, and in order to help the CEOs, if I can coach and we have programs for VPs, if I can make their VP successful, what automatically makes the CEO successful. So that's what was the biggest ask from the CEOs was, hey, Pradeep, can you work with my VPs because they need help? And I realized that through helping them, I can make CEOs more successful. Because what is the biggest challenge that CEOs have if they've developed a business that size, right? Is their senior executive team. That's the biggest challenge, right? There's conflict sometimes, or someone's leaving, they need to bring someone new on, or they're not doing the things that they need them to be doing, or being a strategic. So their biggest headaches, CEOs, are their executive team. So aside from competition, it's their executive team. So that's where I've started to focus more attention, and we're having some great results there.
So I guess the executive team or the VPs can also join the podcast and ask questions too, not only CEOs.
Yes, we're gonna be creating more channels for the VP level as well. So that's what we're
That's
looking
awesome.
forward to.
Well, thank you so much, Purdeep, for all the insights, for all the guidance, for all your passion trying to help leaders to grow their businesses and feel better while they're doing that. So we appreciate all your insights. So before we wrap up, I wanted to make sure that the listeners know we will put all the stuff in the show notes so that you can follow Purdeep on, the podcast, social media, find the resources that he shared today, so then you can be prepared and also grow your business with a different mindset to help you be better at what you do. So thank you, Purdeep, for joining us today. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in. And please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review if you enjoy this episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
See you next time.